5 minutes to showtime. 5 minutes until we go live. Three-minute countdown. 3 minutes until we go live. One minute. 1 minute until showtime.
Stop the violence. I'm Joe Chiro, Fox News. That's a question on the minds of many city leaders, but some of them disagree with President Trump's deployment of federal agents. Several cities last night with more unrest, including Portland, where federal agents again clashed with crowds. Fox Bridget Chavez.
Today, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Oregon and the Department of Homeland Security met to discuss the ongoing violence and protests happening in downtown Portland. 57 days and nights of protests. Protesters facing off once again with federal officers. Assistant U.S. Attorney for the District of Oregon, Craig Gabriel, says federal law enforcement will stay in Portland until protests remain peaceful.
The White House plans to send agents to more cities, including Albuquerque and Chicago. Administration officials say the government will move quickly to pass another coronavirus stimulus package as Senate Republicans plan to roll out their bill tomorrow.
Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, the White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows say they have been spending the weekend consulting with Senate Republican staff on a bill that represents an opening offer to Democrats. Many of the provisions in the massive package Congress passed in March are beginning to expire, like the $600 boost to unemployment benefits. Democrats want to continue that payment. Republicans are pushing government benefit no more than about 70% of a worker's previous pay.
Fox's Rich Edson. Hawaiians bracing for Hurricane Douglas headed their way, which will pass very close to, if not making landfall, across the islands. Strong winds and heavy rain are still expected, even though Douglas will likely weaken further and could become a tropical storm. Southern Texas is still dealing with heavy rain and strong winds from now Tropical Storm Hannah. America is listening to Fox News.
America's ready to get back to work.
Your protection from deception. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future. In here, the results are always positive. We might try to go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us. Want to greet everybody tonight. Wow, what a crowd we have tonight. This is really good. Greenheart is back in the chat room. So good to see you. MacGyver's there. Doug 610. Moverling, as usual, has kicked us off with a fantastic donation. Helped us turn the lights on today. Looks like we're going to be suffering from maybe some internet problems tonight. We're going to try our best to avoid those. Lightning got our modem earlier in the week, came in through the cable, so the Spectrum guys are going to come out on Wednesday and see if we can't get this back up and running the way it should run. So if we bomb out on you tonight, you'll know what the cause was. It wasn't me, it was the internet, and just good to see everybody out there. And I got somebody called Skidge. Skidge, welcome to the program. Happy Sunday to you too, sir. Delina, up there in Vancouver, BC. Good to see you too. Wow, great to have you here. It's wonderful to be live. I was wrestling with running an archive tonight, but I thought, no, we're going to risk it. We're going to risk it. They've been messing with our internet all week long, and oh, thank you, Doug, very much for that contribution. It definitely helps. All right, let's get started. We have a lot to go through. I don't even know if we'll get through it all tonight. First, the Religion of Peace report. In the last 7 days, the Religion of Peace conducted 39 attacks. In these 39 attacks, they killed 167 innocent people. They injured 155 innocent people. Is that another contribution, Doug? That is, wait, no, that's one contribution. Okay, thank you very much. It just goes slow, and I saw it out of the corner of my eye. And Aurora Keene from Hawaii. So we've got people from BC all the way to Hawaii. This is good. Eric, good to see you here. What was the pink lightning that hit the Statue of Liberty? I don't know. That was really weird, wasn't it? What a rumble. And the Religion of Peace conducted 1 suicide blast and spread their mayhem across 10 countries. All of this wonderfulness from the Religion of Peace. And let's not forget that the Global Syndicate has just about every major Democrat city. Festus, good to see you out there. Every Democrat city lit up across the country. Of course, it's so funny. You are being punched in the face, and yet you're being criticized for hitting their fist with your face. Please stop resisting. Stop resisting. You know, I've heard people out there say, well, Trump needs to talk about unity. He needs to preach unity. I hear that. You know, I hear one nation under God. I hear, America first. And to hear other countries cherishing our flag, our liberty, and our freedom more than we do is something. It came to me over the weekend, you know, when you turn the light up very bright, the shadows get very dark. And to hear people from the shadows say, we need unity, tells me they want me to turn the lights out. Well, I'm sorry. We're not going to do that. Yes, I see that. 2 million donations in 1 month. I think they're going to make it too. I think that, by the way, 77% of Americans are afraid to express their political beliefs for fear of retribution. People won't even fly an American flag outside their home or put a Trump sign in their yard because they're afraid a brick will go through their window or their house will be burned down or their kids will be beat up at the bus stop. And it's kind of interesting, too, the teachers union is totally behind this burning of America, and they want it to continue. Of course, Trump wants the schools to open, so if Betsy DeVos gets her way and they're able to transfer the money to the parents to go with the children, some of these states are spending upwards of $17,000, $18,000, $19,000 a year per student. That's a lot. That's a lot. And I could just tell you right now, 9 months of schooling, if you're getting $18,000 a year, that's about $2,000 a month by my calculation. $2,000 a month would put every single student in America in private school. It would pay for private school. Yeah, it would. Around here, it's about $1,500 a month for high school. It's about $800 a month for elementary. So it would be more than enough. I know. They're saying, well, so you want all the public schools to close and the private schools to open. You know, that's the result, but that's not what I want. Moverling, you are so generous. You humble me to the dust. I just don't know what to say. These contributions are so amazing. He's made another contribution on behalf of everyone in the chat room, on behalf of all of us, and Boo too. So Boo is one of our moderators and also one of the staff members here at the studio. So very helpful, very helpful. Yes, no funding needed for stream learning. Yeah, and I'm being recruited, you know, as an online professor. So I don't know. It sounds pretty good to me, not having to drive 270 miles a day to work every day. All I have to do is basically drive in here to the studio, which is about 50 feet, and sit here and teach. Might be good. All right, listen, we want to talk about the X-Files. We don't do it very often on this program. And the reason is because we prefer the hard science. Oh, I could talk about unidentified flying objects all day long. I could talk about phase shifting and trans-dimensional ships, but I'm a hard science guy. I have to have proof. I have to have evidence. Well, the Pentagon team that's tasked with studying unidentified flying objects plans to publicly release information on its findings. Now, this is really getting somewhere, because the unit, now known as Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force, which I think is right around the corner from, I'm pretty sure it is the janitor's office at the Pentagon. Yeah, it's one of those really small offices. I don't even think it has an anteroom. You kind of have to move the mops aside, and there's the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force room. Anyway, they're going to report at least some of its work to the Senate Intelligence Committee every 6 months, with some of the group's past officials hinting of possible otherworldly artifacts. And this was not only reported in the New York Times, but it was also reported on cable TVs, or should I say satellite TV, I don't know, cable news, all-time highest ranking opinion show, and that is Tucker Carlson. Of course, Tucker, just about every night, he alludes to something, some light in the sky, some sighting here, some testimony there, even in an interview or two during the year. So he's kind of on it. He's up on it. For a mainstream guy, or should I say the satellite TV guys that come through the Fox News, he does a pretty good job of keeping everybody abreast. I was going to say mainstream, but honestly, this came up in a meeting we had yesterday. Really, yes, good evening, Bomar. Good to see you out there. Andrew, I have not seen you before. Andrew, welcome to the program. Well, all right, UFOs, something I can sit back and drink a beverage and listen to you. I think I'll do the same thing, except mine's water, so... This is something that fascinates everybody, but also confuses everybody. And it was kind of interesting because I looked at the photograph that they posted. And here was this cigar-shaped, kind of blurry image. And I went back through my photographs that I took up at Trout Lake. And there it was. There it was. We did what's called a cross-validation photographic experiment, which is I was taking pictures in the daylight of Mount Adams from James Gilliland's ranch, which is about, I don't know, it's hard to tell with mountains, maybe 10 miles away. And the mountain's pretty large and covered with snow, even in the summertime. And there off in the blue sky next to the mountain, this is after the conference was all over and most everyone had gone home, and we were just kind of relaxing out in the yard before we had to fly out the next morning. And we had the camera up on a tripod, and we were taking digital pictures with a 10 megapixel camera of the mountain. And what was showing up on the laptop were these ships, not really corporal, not really crisp, clean, like sun glinting off of the otherworldly metal ships, but kind of blurry, kind of a cigar-shaped shadow in the sky. And first one on the left and then one on the right. And then there was a big one by my calculation, was about 500 feet long. And so there was another person out there with me, and they had a 14 megapixel camera. And I said, hey, let's do an experiment, okay? We're going to take 10 photographs or 10 images. And I'll say like 1, 2, and we'll snap at the same time, roughly at the same time. And we'll see what happens. Well, 20 pictures between us. And there was this ship, both cameras, different brands. It wasn't a lens flare. It couldn't possibly be. We were like 30 feet apart. It was a daytime shot. We weren't shooting into the sun. The sun was like way off to the west. And I was amazed that this experiment worked out the way that it did. But, I kind of put it in my photographic anomaly file. I show it from time to time in live presentations when I lecture around the country, just asking, hey, what is, why couldn't we see this with the naked eye? But the digital cameras picked it up. And so I did a little bit of scientific analysis, and I discovered that digital cameras do not take one image. They take multiple images. They take like a 10 megapixel camera will take like 100 images in a 125th of a second. It can do that, right? Electronics, we're not dealing with film. And what it does is it will oversample. It will lay one image over the other, and the same, and it'll do it very quickly. And thus you get a very sharp image. You get all the pixels filled in, but you get something else. The oversampling allows you to see things with the digital camera you cannot see with the naked eye. The naked eye can be fooled pretty easily. I'm looking at a screen right now that it's flashing at about 70 times a second. You look at a television screen that flashes between 50 and 60 cycles per second. Does your eye see the flash? Maybe, but your brain doesn't see it. It blends it together. So if something is vibrating at another frequency, higher or very low frequency, chances are your eye is not going to put it together because you have an analog system. The system by which you log an image is chemical. The energy, the photons come into your eye, stimulate the neurons and cones in your eyes, and those cells then put off electrical impulses which go to the brain. The brain flips it upside down, averages them together, and that's what you see or don't see. You know, the hand is quicker than the eye, so they say. So the otherworldly ship is also quicker than the eye, but not quicker than the digital camera. The digital camera can pick it up, but is it a crisp image? No. It's kind of blurry. It's kind of not there, but it is there. It's kind of fuzzy, like it's vibrating at a very high frequency. It's sort of like a fan. You know, when the fan is off, it's very easy to see the three blades of the fan, right? But if you turn the fan on, what you see is a blur, right? You don't really see the blades of the fan. You see a blur. And if you flash a strobe light at that fan, what'll happen is your eye will see the blades frozen in various positions, so much so that that's one of the reasons why they put a guard over the fan, I guess. But, you know, little kids, they can feel the air from the fan, but their eyes see the frozen fan blade with the strobe light, and they'll want to stick their finger, you know, in, or of course you grab their hand back because the blade, you know, even a plastic blade will knock you in the fingers pretty hard. So they put a guard over the fan just so humans won't stick their finger in the fan, or you walk into it inadvertently, or a bird in the room, or a cat, you know, whatever. You don't want something to get hurt by the fan. The point is that these ships may be vibrating between dimensions, or they may be able to vibrate the air around their ships. Maybe that's their propulsion system, how they sit up there silently like that. And in doing so, Williams says it's the field effect. It could be, although, you know, the field effect, it doesn't really affect light, not for us. It doesn't affect photons like that. Heat will do that. You know, if you look out over a hot highway, you'll see the light kind of bend a little bit. Heat will do that. And that leads me to believe that maybe what we're dealing with here is a form of radiation around the ship that is actually disturbing the pathway of the photons leaving the ship, and that's why we can't see it. It just sits there, but it was sitting there off of Mount Adams, and I found it to be very interesting that my image matched the Pentagon image very, very closely. Eric Davis, one of the former officials from the Pentagon UFO program, said while he worked there, the team found objects he believed we couldn't make ourselves. Davis also said he gave a classified briefing to a Defense Department agency this March, during which he elaborated on, and I quote, off-world vehicles not made on this earth, close quote. That's bold. It's really bold. I mean, it could have been made inside the earth. It could have been made under the sea. Those are areas that are out of our purview as well. On the other hand, somebody said to me yesterday, well, maybe they made it on the moon. Well, these ships are not made of dirt. They're made of advanced materials. They're made and fashioned with curious workmanship. And as far as we know, there's no workshop like that on the moon, which means it's got to be further away than the moon. Now, my guest that I had on a couple of weeks ago, Rob Prophet and the Venusian expert Ray, they think maybe Venus may have intelligent life in it, maybe not on it, but in it. And they have been coming here for a long time. Hard to tell. Off-world means something different to everybody. I'm a hard science guy, and I believe that maybe off-world Mars, off-world Venus, off-world one of the moons of Saturn, or they're out, possibly. Still, Earth's a long ways away, but it's doable. Off-worldly, another star system? Now we're getting in the violation of the laws of physics. I don't think we have, even if they were superluminal craft, you're talking about staying in a ship, even 500 feet long. It's not very big. It's half the size of the Enterprise. You're talking about staying in a ship for 5 to 8 years to get to Earth. You can't see Earth from 5 to 8 light years away. No, it doesn't show up. Our sun is just a little teeny tiny main sequence sun on the outer rim of the Milky Way galaxy. Not interesting at all. Of course, we've been sending radio waves out into space for 60, 70 years, maybe 100 if you go back to the turn of the century. But still, it would take 8 years for the signal to get there, 8 years for them to get here at the speed of light, which is pushing it. Just the amount of energy that it would take to approach the speed of light is just off the chain, okay? Mr. Davis also said he gave a classified briefing, and he said it's not immediately clear what will be detailed in the force's reports to the Senate, though the goal is to determine whether other nations have made advancements in aviation engineering beyond the United States' knowledge, because, we like to say that we own the airspace above the United States of America. But it's clear, I think you know, and I know, and maybe several people on my block and further out, and maybe everybody in this country knows, that is not so. There are other craft that can fly with impunity through our airspace. Senator Marco Rubio from Florida, the acting chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, told a Miami CBS affiliate earlier this month that he wanted more clarity from the task force as a matter of national security. Of course, national security. We have things flying over our military bases and places where we are conducting military exercises, and we do not know what it is, and it isn't ours, said Rubio. Could be coneheads. U.S. lawmakers are asking the Pentagon for a detailed, unclassified report on unidentified aerial phenomenon over concerns the issue has been given scant attention from the intelligence community while acknowledging the existence of an unidentified aerial phenomenon task force. Oh my gosh, we didn't even know we were paying for one, and we don't get to see the reports. That's what it really boils down to. In his report attached to his 2020-2021 Senate Intelligence Authorization Act, Marco Rubio, acting chairman, instructs the Director of National Security, the Secretary of Defense, and other agency heads to compile the data on unidentified aerial phenomena, more commonly referred to as UFOs. The committee remains concerned that there is no unified, comprehensive process within the federal government for collecting and analyzing intelligence on unidentified aerial phenomenon. Well, Marco, it's all a need-to-know basis. And I hate to tell you this, but congressmen and senators, they don't have a need to know. We do here, though. We have a need to know because my listeners want to know. The committee understands that the relevant intelligence may be sensitive. Nevertheless, the committee finds that the information sharing and coordination across the intelligence community has been inconsistent, to say the least. Seems like Steven Spielberg's getting more information than we are. And this issue has lacked attention from senior leaders. That's kind of an oxymoron, isn't it? Senior leaders? You mean senior politicians, don't you? Big difference there between leaders and politicians. I think the chat room agrees. Yes, Doug 610 says agreed. Agreed. Well, Festus, you amuse me. Just have your six-pack of beer ready. I will be ready with my six-pack of beer for the Coneheads. Maintain low tones with me. Maintain low tones, Mr. Festus. Anyway, the bill still needs to pass the Senate. It's going to be amusing to see if that happens. Lawmakers are asking for a report within 180 days of the bill's approval. Why not 1 day? Why do you have to wait 180 days? You know, that's like almost 6 months, right? That's crazy. That's like first of the week. First, get back with me first of the week. What does that mean? Why not now? Don't you know? Can't you set aside 5 minutes in the next day to read this report? 180 days. See, that's a politician. That's not a leader. So what's going on in the Senate? Lawmakers on the Senate Intelligence Committee, which that's also the whole thing. The whole thing is just an oxymoron. You should take intelligence out of there. Lawmakers on the Senate Committee who think they're intelligent. That's better, don't you think? Deputy Director of Paper Towels wanted the American people to see the government's report on UFOs, warning that not enough is known about the potential. I'm going to use this word because it's in the report, but I don't really believe it. I don't really believe it. About the potential threat, according to a new report. What threat? Did I miss something? Did I miss something? I mean, that's like saying that patriots are a threat. How could that be? Patriots have all the guns. Patriots are the one right over there, right up there at the gun store. They're practicing every Saturday and Sunday all day long. Boom, 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 boom. They're practicing. If patriots were the problem, you'd know about it. They have all the guns, and they're really good with them. If UFOs were a threat, don't you think we'd know about it? Don't you think they would shoot down something? Shoot up something? Burn something? Steal something? Like we have anything that they want? We're cockroaches to them. We're nothing more than ants. Violent ants at that. Members of the committee voted on Tuesday. Now let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Don't go away, YouTubers.
Extendivite, a 7-herb combination made from garlic, cayenne, hawthorn, bilberry, ginkgo biloba, valerian, and milk thistle. Extendivite feeds our body with the right nutrients to keep us healthy. Just listen to what Arthur has to say.
I was just calling to tell you what a great product you have. I had used this about 10 years ago after I had congestive heart failure. And it fixed me up and got me going for the last 10 years. Lately, I've been having heart trouble again, so I placed another order because this was the only thing that ever worked. I just wanted to let you know that you have a great product.
To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822. or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Hey, it's Grace. Can we talk about something serious for a minute? Your age. Getting old has its perks. But remember, being a few years younger, you know, your hair was thicker, you didn't have so many wrinkles, that extra weight wasn't haunting you, and you just felt better. Well, we can't turn back the clocks and go back 10 or 15 years, but you can start feeling and looking 10 or 15 years younger with Nature's Youth RSF. It's a doctor-formulated daily supplement that helps your body maintain its peak performance and fight the aging process. Imagine sleeping better, looking better, and feeling better. See how Nature's Youth RSF has helped thousands of people just like you at nature'syouth.com. nature'syouth.com. Imagine how it will feel when your family and friends are asking you what you did to look so good. Your secret will be Nature's Youth RSF. It's time to start looking better and feeling better. Learn more and order your Nature's Youth RSF at nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com.
He was the deputy director of MI6, Britain's most senior diplomat. He was knighted by the Queen and in charge of thousands of highly trained spies. But he was also a member of the Paedophile Information Exchange. He had 45 diaries full of sex fantasies with children. His friend was the private secretary of Margaret Thatcher. He strangled a child and hit another with his car. He raped young boys and organized orgies with children for other politicians.
The Enigma Channel, intelligent television for planet Earth. EnigmaTV.com.
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are TFR Frequency Radio.
Welcome back, everyone. By the way, we are streaming live on the Truth Frequency Radio Network audio. That's at tfrlive.com, tfrlive.com. This is where the Truth Freaks hang out, and we are not afraid to let our Truth Freak flag fly. Also, we are streaming live on YouTube, and you can get to that by going to my YouTube channel at Brooks Agnew. Everything is at Brooks Agnew. Follow me on social media. It will treat, cure, and prevent the disease of ignorance. Lots going on in the chat room during the break. Kroger is putting a 59-cent BLM surcharge on your receipt. I don't know what that is. Is that to kind of bank up some money so when BLM comes and busts out the windows and loots the place, that it'll pay for those groceries? Is that what we're doing? We're paying for the looting in advance? Is that what the deal is? And I also wanted to acknowledge MacGyver is out there. Yeah, I did too. I put the crank on my 1022 to make a little mini Gatling. I actually designed my own receiver. Yeah, I machined it myself. I machined my own receiver for my Ruger 1022 so it would fire in full automatic. Oh, I went through a whole bunch of 22 ammo, a whole bunch. So I finally took that receiver out and put the regular receiver back in. So my 1022 is totally legal right now. This was way back in the last century anyway, so not to worry now. And lots of conversations going on out there about maybe a false flag where, we're trying to set people up for a fake alien invasion so that we can mobilize our best and greatest sky weapons and launch them out there and thus dominate our airspace. Reiner, good to see you out there. He says the powers that should not be. We're not too much about cliches here at this program, but I know exactly what you're talking about. The global syndicate, I call them. And yes, they are a power that should not be, but they've been around for a long, long time. Thousands of years they've been doing it the same way. Yes, it could be, Doug, that they're preparing for a false flag. I don't know. It'd be pretty hard to pull that one off. Stoker, good to see you out there. And Delina, thank you very much for the kind comments. So the Senate is trying to flex its muscle. The committee remains concerned that there is no unified, comprehensive. You should always be careful when anyone in politics says comprehensive. It's a dangerous word. Comprehensive process within the federal government for collecting and analyzing intelligence, like they could even hold on to it if they collected it, on unidentified aerial phenomena despite the potential threat, lawmakers wrote in a report. What does that mean? I mean, UFOs have been around since forever, and in a serious way since 1947, right? Movies have been made about them, and who knows how accurate they are, where they got their information, but how they fly and what they do. And we've been fascinated with it. Star Wars built a whole legacy out of Star Trek. Come on. We're talking about 300 years in the future when money is not important, poverty goes away, and, disease pretty much has been figured out. If they can't cure you, they'll scatter your molecules all over the universe and put them back together the right way anyway with a transporter. We've been thinking about it a long time. But I don't think any of it's been threatening. Do you? I mean, some of the movies have been. Maybe these guys have been watching like Skyline or Taken or, brain-eating aliens. They're not that way. If they were, we'd know about it, right? We would. The provision included in the annual intelligence authorization bill needs to be passed by the full Senate, but sets up an unusual debate about alien and extraterrestrial life in the halls of Congress. And we just can't have any of that now. We can't talk about extraterrestrial life in these distinguished halls. The move comes after senators on the panel last year received a classified briefing from the Pentagon outlining a series of encounters that Navy aircraft had with unidentified aircraft. One of them was the Tic Tac. You remember the Tic Tac? I mean, flies away from a Super Hornet, an F-18, one of the fastest jets we have, with pilots that had nothing but water underneath them so they could, sonic boom the crap out of that thing if they wanted to. They couldn't keep up with it. And it had no wings. It didn't have an exhaust port, no windows. Who was flying that thing? One thing's for sure, they all wanted to. I got to get me one of these, to quote a famous quote out of Independence Day. So the committee mandates the task force standardize collection and reporting on unidentified aerial phenomena. Like, you can do that. What does that mean? Standardize. I know all about standardization. I'm a quality engineer. We know what 5S is, right? One of them is standardize. Standardize. Sort, standardize, shine, right? Standardize. Make it all the same. Make it the same header. Make it all the same header. Make it all the same form. Make the photographs all the same size and on the left-hand side of the paper. Standardize your report. No wonder it's going to take them 180 days. Senator Rubio says, maybe there is a completely sort of boring explanation for it, but we need to find out. The UFO program began in 2007. Where has he been? Where has he been? What do you mean 2007? The UFO report program started in like 1947, okay? Wow, 2007, under the Defense Intelligence Agency, and has since morphed and been moved under the operation of the Office of Naval Intelligence, the Times reported. Luis Elizondo, the program's previous director who resigned in 2017, told the paper he was convinced the team has studied objects of unknown origin. I quit because nobody's paying any attention to me. What's going on here? He praised the idea of delivering reports to the committee as a way to pull back the curtain on some of that work. He said, "It no longer has to hide in the shadows. It will have a new transparency." There's another word, transparency. So who's really thought about this? Who has been involved? Yes, I know. Mr. Virtue says hive minds in the chat room. Yes, exactly. And Blanche, which is a name I have not seen before, welcome to the chat room. Have a great evening all. Gotta go. You just got here. You just got here. Of course, you can always come back, and now you can hear your name in the archives. Very cool. Boo says, no, not true. But there I was, diving off the cliff with the fake report. Hate that when that happens. Yeah. Fake reports. Marilyn Nelson. My husband used to give me the stats for the religion of peace. Yes, I do that. I didn't do it for a while. I stopped doing it for a while and had somebody write me, hey, what's the religion of peace doing? How many news outlets out there give you a weekly update on how many people are killed and how many people are injured by the religion of peace? I can count them on one finger. Right here. That's it. We're the only place. I have a good source for it. I could read the events that behind each one of those deaths, but I won't because it's too much misery. It's too much killing. 155 people this week. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. So who's been thinking about this? Who's been thinking about a standard way to meet and greet? Well, there's an organization out there. The name was originally coined by a man named Michael Sala, I'm sorry. And he calls it exopolitics. And it's been bandied about. Years ago, back in the last century, no, it was early in this century, I'm sorry, we wrote a Peace in Space initiative. It was myself and Michael Sala and Alfred Lambermont Weber. And wow, another donation on behalf of all of us. Thank you, Moverling. You stagger us, absolutely stagger us. One of the reasons why the sound is so good and the look is so good and the expedition marches forward every single week is because of Moverling 5. And he has promised to call in tonight with some pontification, but we have not seen his phone call yet. Maybe we don't have to worry about it as long as he's putting his thoughts in his big red labels in the chat room. And you can do that too. You can go to the very bottom. You'll see the little square next to the emoji in the top chat. The little square with the $sign in it. We call that top chat. You can click on that, put any number you want in there, and you can contribute. Even Japanese Defense Minister Taro Kono acknowledged recently that protocols will be will be established just in case. We would like to decide what to do in the event we encounter a UFO. And the exopolitics, we had thought about that. We put forth this Peace in Space initiative. We crafted it, we wordsmithed it, and I was actually supposed to give it to the General Assembly of the UN. But they had their own ideas. They wanted to concentrate on the de-weaponization of space. Unfortunately, they were about 20 years too late because we started weaponizing space like back in the early 60s. Their idea of using space was totally socialism, and it would never work. It would never work. It just would not work. It didn't have anything to do with exploration. It had to do with carving up all the money that was used in the space program and giving it to them. And that just wasn't going to work. So we never got to make our Peace in Space initiative. I thought it was well crafted. It was leaning towards space exploration and resource development in space for protecting the environment here on Earth, so we don't have to dig our planet up and shovel it into our gas tanks and burn it, that we could develop other energy sources and other frontiers for humanity to explore. That's what our initiative was about. But the Japanese also had this concern. And so Mr. Defense Minister Taro Kono, and I quote, he said, "We would like to decide what to do in the event we encounter a UFO," he said. More than 50 years ago, Japan was regarded as a model for dealing with extraterrestrials. The U.S. National Security Agency, the NSA, made recommendations if humans were to encounter aliens from space. Again, you guys are about 35 years too late. It's already been done. It has disclosed a 1968 paper that says the Japanese way was a good example of assimilating other technologies and maintaining their identity, even if their technology was inferior to the other ones, close quote. It adds, people should learn from Japan, whose manner is to be friendly and tries to eagerly learn everything from other cultures and cooperate with each other as one country, close quote. Well, see, unfortunately, Mr. Kono, which means job, by the way, watashi wa kono shigoto ga suki desu. Those of you that speak Japanese know what I just said. The issue is that the NSA, the Pentagon, the CIA, and everyone else in between in the alphabet armies, they want the technology to build a better weapon. They could care less about being able to get to Mars in 7 days or 70 days or 100 days. They could care less about that. They don't want to explore the moon. They don't want to explore Mars. They want to be able to blow up and hold at bay our enemies by having, faster craft that can't be shot down with any earthly technology. And thus, if we had that weaponry, why, you just fill in the blank. I don't know. A science journalist and professor who was involved with a space science museum in Hakui, Ishikawa Prefecture, said Japanese flexibility has attracted a lot of attention. Jozen Takano cited Japan's period of national isolation from the 17th century through the 19th century, when it continued to absorb knowledge about subjects such as medicine and foreign languages at Dejima, a small island in Nagasaki port, used as a trading post with other countries. I quote, "Another example is that Japan grew its economy at a remarkable speed starting from the turmoil following World War II, said Takano, who has been involved with the Space Science Museum, Cosmo Isle Haikui. The museum name means Space Dejima. Takano draws parallels between UFOs and the novel coronavirus, which is similarly unknown. The difference is, Takano-san, the coronavirus origin is known, and the UFOs is not. In April of this year, the U.S. Defense Department declassified the videos shot by U.S. Navy pilots. The 3 black and white videos, which range from 30 seconds to 1 minute and 15 seconds in length, were shot in 2004 and 2015. In the footage, mysterious objects fly over the sea at a rate of speed, at high speed, or rotate in the air. Videos were leaked to the public a few years ago and caused a row over their authenticity, but the objects were still not identified. In Britain, reports of UFO sightings given to the UFO Research Department of the Defense Ministry, which is Nick Pope, my good friend, were made available in the National Archives. For instance, I quote, "My dog was kidnapped while I was camping with my friends, and 2 orange-colored balls were floating in the air in my backyard," close quote. Yeah, those are the kind of reports that we got. And there were others that were more authentic, but still not a bolt, not a photo, not a burned piece of grass, not a independent validated radiation reading, nothing. In one case, there was footage filmed by a soldier with a mobile phone showing 13 objects floating in the air above a building. Later, they were determined to be Chinese lanterns at a wedding ceremony held in the neighborhood nearby. The research department, which had been operating for more than 50 years, was finally closed in 2009 because no UFO sighting had shown any kind of military threat to Britain at all, and that's the only reason that it existed. So the Japanese public has not been immune to UFO sightings over the years, as if there is any nation that has been. In 1956, reports of silver metallic strips, like pieces of paper, were seen falling from the sky in Choshi, Chiba Prefecture. In Fukushima, many people reported seeing a UFO near Mount Sengan-mori, which has a cone shape and a height of 462 meters. The sightings have also earned the site fame as a UFO town. Takayama City in Gifu Prefecture and Tokyo's Meiji Shrine are also well known among UFO aficionados. Bintaro Yamaguchi, a researcher of supernatural phenomena and a YouTube star, continues to receive daily eyewitness reports of UFO sightings. He said 90% of UFO sightings are believed to be military airplanes made by other countries, and only 10% are truly unidentified, which enthralls UFO buffs. Yamaguchi said the public is fascinated by UFOs because people want to be identified. People want to be unidentified objects themselves. That's a peculiar take. I don't know. You know, when you go to James Gilliland's place, if you ever get a chance to go there, you should, at least once in your life, make your way up there, and Trout Lake, Washington. You will see a craft flying overhead and doing what's called powering up. This can be satellites that are still in the sunshine because you're very northern hemisphere there, very north part of Washington, north of Oregon, north of Portland. When they roll over, they reflect the sun's light and they kind of, get brighter and then dimmer again. The first time I saw one, it appeared to me as though it made a turn. It made like a right-hand turn up there. And then it got very bright. Now, although I went up there, I was totally into it. I wanted to see it land in the grass out there. I've been fascinated with them since I was a little kid, 9 years old. But I have to admit, when it appeared to get larger and larger, like it was coming down right on top of us, I had a little wave of panic. I had a little wave like, wow, this is going to happen. And then it just didn't. It made a little slight turn, or it appeared to me that it did, and it kind of dimmed back down again and headed off. I don't know if we're ready. I don't know, coming that close. It's like making contact might not be as friendly as we think it's going to be. People can use their mobile phones, but I can tell you they don't focus in very well. And most of the videos that we see, if they're not daytime shots, nighttime shots with a phone, it just can't focus on those lights up there. It gets all blurry. I've tried it. I've tried it a million times. Digital cameras, unless you can get control of that aperture, they just don't do well with it. Now,
live, uncensored talking news you won't hear in the mainstream media. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
Gearing up for another night. I'm Joe Chiro, Fox News. Some major American cities are once again expecting another chaotic night as demonstrators square off with authorities, and the debate is likely to escalate over whether federal agents should be there.
Seattle is now considered a riot zone. Authorities officially considered it a riot zone last night. A lot of unrest. Authorities made about 24 arrests. The White House is increasingly focusing on Portland, Oregon, where unrest has gone on for approaching 60 nights. The president expanding Operation Legend. It sends federal agents to hotspots around the country to protect federal property like those statues that we've been seeing coming down. Authorities right now say that the initial list will eventually expand.
Fox's David Spunt. White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows says an agreement has been reached in principle between Senate Republicans and the administration on the next coronavirus aid bill. Meadows was on ABC's This Week earlier today.
We are going to be prepared on Monday to provide unemployment insurance extension that would be 70% of whatever the wages you were prior to being unemployed.
Current $600 a week unemployment benefit is set to expire Friday. The House passed its next version of coronavirus relief in May and will have to be reconciled with anything passed in the Senate. Hurricane Douglas churning off the coast of Hawaii's Maui Island as it threatens the state with high surf, powerful winds, and heavy rain.
The National Hurricane Center warning of up to 5 to 10 inches of heavy rain from Maui to Kauai and possible storm surge of up to 3 feet. That hurricane effect and warning is in effect in Oahu and Kauai.
Fox's Alex Hogan. Southern Texas continues to see the effects of Tropical Storm Hannah. America is listening to Fox News.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
I told you it happens from time to time. We had lightning all this week, and the modem evidently was one of our casualties. So we'll see what happens there. We are recording this, so I will upload this in its entirety from where we had the outage. If we can keep the modem stable for the rest of the program. It looks like the chat room took a hit. So you're going to be listening, but you're not going to be able to participate in the chat room. So let's talk a little bit about the ghost, the Russian ghost in the machine. New evidence has exposed the Russian collusion everyone was looking for. Some veteran FBI officials worry Moscow's Foreign Intelligence Service may have planted disinformation with an agent whose name was Igor Danchenko and his network of sources in Russia. Yes, it's true. At least one of them, identified only as Source 5 in the FBI memo, was described as having a Russian curator or handler. There are legions of connected Russians purveying second and third hand and often made up due diligence reports and private intelligence, said former FBI Assistant Director Chris Swecker. Putin's intelligence minions use these people well to plant information. Danchenko confessed he had no inside line to the Kremlin and was clueless when Christopher Steele, hired him in March of 2016. This is March of 2016. We did not even know who the presidential candidate was, who the nominee was, until May 26th of 2016. As I said before, and I've maintained before, that the FBI had spies in the Trump campaign and in the Cruz campaign and possibly even the Kasich campaign. Because as you remember, in March of 2016, John Kasich and Ted Cruz and Donald Trump were all candidates in the primary. Anyway, all the way back in March of 2016, the FBI was investigating ties between Russia and Trump and his campaign manager. Also, they, I believe, had spies in the Ted Cruz campaign because they feared Ted Cruz as well. The Senate did not like him, and none of the Democrats liked him at all. So, desperate for leads, he turned to a ragtag group of Russian and American journalists, drinking buddies, including one who'd been arrested on pornography charges, and even an old girlfriend to scare up information for his London paymaster, according to the FBI's January 2017 interview memo, which, by the way, the memo runs 57 pages. Yeah, that's a big interview. Like him, his friends made a living hustling gossip for cash. And they fed him a tissue of false rumor and speculation, which Steele, in turn, further embellished with spy-crafty details and sold to his client as intelligence. Who was Christopher Steele's client? Who did he sell it to? Instead of closing its case against Trump, however, the FBI continued to rely on the information Danchenko dictated to Steele for the dossier, even swearing to a secret court that it was credible enough to renew wiretaps for another 9 months. Danchenko first ran into trouble with the law as he began working for Brookings, the preeminent Democrat think tank in Washington, where he struck up a friendship with none other than, guess who? Fiona Hill. Yeah, the White House advisor who committed perjury in Schiff's fraudulent impeachment hearings against President Trump last year. Yeah, Danchenko has described Fiona Hill as a mentor, while Hill has sung his praises as a creative researcher. Fiona Hill, not to be confused with Fiona Shrek, is also close to his boss, Christopher Steele, who she'd known since all the way back in 2006. She met with the former British intelligence officer during the 2016 campaign and later received a raw, unpublished copy of the now debunked dossier. It does not appear the FBI asked Danchenko about his criminal past or state of sobriety when agents interviewed him in January of 2017 in a failed attempt to verify the accuracy of the dossier. Excuse me while I check the chat room in. Okay, we're all right. Everything's good. Okay, let's see. In a failed attempt to verify the accuracy of the dossier, which the Bureau did only after agents used it to obtain a warrant to surveil Trump campaign advisor Carter Page. The opposition research was contracted to Danchenko, who was paid for the information he provided by Steele, who was on the payroll of Hillary Clinton's campaign. The 42-year-old Danchenko, who was hired by Steele in early 2016, we told you back in March, to deploy a network of sources to fabricate dirt on Trump and Russia for the Hillary Clinton campaign. He was arrested, he was jailed, and he was convicted years earlier on multiple public drunkenness and disorderly conduct charges in the Washington area in order to undergo substance abuse and mental health counseling, according to criminal records. In an odd twist, a 2013 federal case against Danchenko was prosecuted by guess who? Who would you guess? the infamous then U.S. Attorney Rod Rosenstein. Yes. Who ended up signing one of the FBI's dossier-based wiretap warrants as Deputy Attorney General in 2017. Now, that's what I call collusion. My only question is, when is one of these guys, or Fiona Hill, going to go to prison? Are you listening, Mr. President? This was sent in by one of my listeners, and it's for the police. I think it's kind of uplifting, so I'm going to share it with you. Let me check my phone lines out there. Yes, we do have a caller. Been on hold for 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and bring him on before we go into the next segment. Redding, California, welcome to the program. What is on your mind?
Hey, Brooks, this is Moverling 5.
Good to hear your voice,
anyway,
sir.
Great show tonight.
Well, we do overcome and we do adapt. Lightning has played its havoc with our modem, and it doesn't look like we're going to get it fixed till Wednesday, so we're kind of limping along. I have duct tape over it right now, so hopefully it'll stay working.
I burned out 3 modems last year. It wasn't from lightning. It was because people hit the electric poles down the road, but that surge really did us in. So I wanted to call and talk a little bit about old souls and like my wife and I. First of all, I need to say this. I do donate money to the show, but I just want people to know my last name is not Rockefeller, Musk, Bezos, Soros, Bush, or Clinton. So
thank you very much.
Get that out of the way first. But I wanted to talk about old souls and there's just too many coincidences involved with my wife and I, and so I'm 6 years older than her, and we actually met when she was 27. But we have so much in common over the years. Like we were both born in Orange County, and then after a certain period of age, like when we both hit kindergarten, we moved from Southern California up to Northern California, a small little town called Shingletown. And we went to the same school up there. We didn't know each other, but same school. And then a few years later, we both moved down to Redding, California, just about 30 miles west of Shingletown. And she went to school with my younger sister, just a few years younger. And we had a lot in common. Like, I joined the military, but I got a degree in criminal justice. Well, she was going to ROP classes for law enforcement. Now, it didn't work out for either one of us because I wasn't interested. I moved back east, and I found out it was a who you know, not what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did a lot of industrial maintenance, and then went into military service. And then when I got out, I relocated back here to California. And then the place I worked for was a dairy, and we delivered milk and ice cream to all the stores around here. And one of the stores we delivered to was a store she worked at for 16 years.
Wow.
And then one of the buddies I work with was trying to hook me up with her friend. And so I had a barbecue, but he was all over that girl. Anyway, I met my wife that day, and then, I was sending her notes and stuff all the time, but there was even more in common. I mean, the barbecue we had, when I invited her to it, she lived 3 driveways down from my house. I mean, come on. I just want to hear your opinion on all that. It's just crazy.
Well, I have more than an opinion. I do know that souls are created in pairs through a square root process in the cosmos. Of course, a few iterations away from main source, we're created pretty much close to 1. If you take the square root of any large number, it doesn't take many iterations to get down to close to 1. But I do believe that souls are born over and over again, and not necessarily on this world. They may have been born on other worlds and had otherworldly experience, as is evidenced by a lot of people who come to this world who are kind of out of step with it. It takes them a while to get used to the gravity and all the other souls that are here that have done many iterations here. But I do know that they kind of travel together, and sometimes, as is often the case, I find that one leads the other sometimes 1 year, sometimes 2, sometimes 10, rarely more than that, although in space 10 years is nothing. The souls travel pretty much together, but it depends on when they die as well. If they die at separate times on another world, and then they have that world is destroyed, let's say, then they have a chance to incarnate on another world. I find that, especially now, in this time, in this planet, this world, that those souls incarnate here, pretty close to one another. Now, the most interesting pattern that I've seen is exactly what you're describing, that somehow in maybe the subconscious level, they're connected. They haven't met physically yet, but they travel with one another. In my case, it was Simi Valley, California, and then it was Detroit, and then, it was, we named our animals the same name. We had so many things that were exactly alike. Now you could say, oh, those are just coincidences. And you can just say, well, it doesn't matter when you're born or what you name your animals or, how you comb your hair or what your favorite food is. But it does. It's a statement of resonance. And when souls like this come together, and they're very old, they have a lot of experience, they have a tremendous amount of wisdom that belies their age, believe me. When they meet for the first time, it's just like a synergy happens that doesn't happen around other beings, because you're made together. You're like soulmates. Even though you're not the same chronological age in this world, you are the same chronological age in spirit.
And you remember I had said that we were just 3 driveways down when we met, but like 15 years before that, and we didn't even know it, we were actually lived about 2 streets apart on one part of town, and then a few years later, we lived about 3 streets apart on the other side of town. So one of those things. It's really odd, but
it's not odd. It's always been that way.
After 15 years, we have never even had an argument in 15 years.
It has always been that way. It's been that way for tens of thousands of years with you two. You incarnate on the same world in generally the same place, and you're drawn to each other. It takes time. Sometimes we camp, but there's a restlessness about souls like you and her. They're drawn to each other, and when they're finally back together, it's like the soul is at rest, because the whole soul is now put back together.
Yes. I wanted to say thank you for your program. I love it, and I'm always there for you. I want to thank everybody in chat. Please hit that like button and make sure that you know people, subscribe, share, do everything you can. I'm telling you, if it wasn't for Brooks, I'd probably go see a different doctor and get diagnosed with ignorance, and I'm glad Brooks is here.
Wow.
Thank you all. Thanks, Brooks. Have a good night.
Thank you so much. Good night. Well, calls like that humble you to the dust. There's just no way to get around it. It's one of those things that you don't get to share with a lot of people, because not many people understand that. They don't either believe that souls incarnate over and over again, and it is a matter of belief. I mean, it is a matter of belief, but it's also a matter of knowledge. And maybe that knowledge doesn't come until after you die, which is a little too late, isn't it? Don't you think that knowledge would be useful in a single mortal lifetime, that you could make powerful changes and powerful improvements in your life? So I have a note that was sent to me, and it has to do with a woman. This was sent in by one of my listeners, and I'm going to quote. Since Saturday, I have been spending a couple of hours a day driving around in search of police. Now, before you get all defensive about this, listen closely. Whenever I find an officer, I pull over, give them a copy of the poem, and speak with them. I have quite a few heart-melting stories. I have now gotten out about 90 of the poems. A few days ago, one officer I gave it to told me no one on earth hates bad cops as much as the good cops do. I assured him most people know that. When I offered him the poem, he asked whether it was pro or anti-police. I told him it was pro, of course. The majority of people love our police. He said what many have said, that I have no idea how much a little love is appreciated by the law enforcement officers right now. What I noticed yesterday was that when I approached the officers, the officers were no longer bracing themselves for tongue lashing. Now they know there is some woman wandering around Tampa, Florida, with the mission of making the officers feel loved, respected, and heroic. Some of them are now telling me things like their partner got one the other day, and they were hoping to get one themselves. Their squad leader got one the other day, and they took a picture of it and sent it to everyone in the squad. They are happy to have their own copy now, so they can read it in their car when they need to. The night before last, I found a police officer at a dead end on the Tampa Bay Yacht Club. I parked next to him, and as soon as I put my car in park, he put his in reverse. I jumped out of my car, smiling and waving, and stood in front of his car and motioned for him to roll down his window. He was not amused. He rolled down his window, and I told him I was driving around looking for police to thank them for their service, their protection, and their heroism. I gave him the poem. He read it and started beaming. He told me he was going to spend the rest of his shift making copies of it for his fellow officers at his precinct. Thank you so much. You have no idea how much this means to us at this time. Hashtag support our police. The 1st of July. I was out again for the 12th day in a row, passing out poems to law enforcement officers. The last officer I gave a poem to had been a policeman in Tampa for 30 years. She told me she never expected Tampa to turn against the police, and she was in shock about it. I responded that I know that it is actually only about 2% of the population who are loud and nasty, but they do not speak for the other 98% of us who still love our police. She was brought to tears, stating that I couldn't know how much it means to hear that at this moment. I gave her the poem and she read it and told me she would really like to give me a hug, but she understands she can't. I told her I'm not worried about it. If she wants a hug, I'll give her one. What? She can risk her life every day for 30 years to protect my community, and I can't risk a hug? Obviously, I hugged her, and she promised to share my kindness with all her fellows. A week later, the 8th of July, today was one of my most successful days in getting out the poem to the officers. One of the officers I ran into was someone I gave the poem to a week or so ago. When he saw me, he grabbed his poem and waved it at me. He told me he keeps it in his passenger seat and probably reads it about 6 times per shift. He told me he has talked to the other officers about it, and every officer he knows is doing the same thing. He said it was his personal opinion that the poem was what is holding together the Tampa Police Department at this time. He also mentioned that he now sees the poem on every police-related website he goes into. Police have been posting it to each other all over the place. So then I drove to downtown and pulled up behind a police officer and flagged him down. He pulled over, parking fairly illegally, and I did the same. I was pretty annoyed at being pulled over. I told him I had written this poem to thank officers and would love him to have it and share it with his friends. He loved it. Called 4 other police officers over to get their poems, and they were all very touched. Some of them had seen it and wanted their own copy but weren't sure how to get it, and were all really happy that I had found them. Then I went to the courthouse. There were 5 police vehicles and no police. I put the poem under their windshield wipers and walked down the block to where I could see a few other police vehicles, 3 blocks down. I was stopped by a sheriff who came out of an unlabeled building. and said there was a call that you were out. You are the lady with the poetry. The police wanted me to tell you thank you. I asked if she had her own copy. She said she couldn't have one because she was a sheriff, not a police officer. I told her as the author of the poem, I consider her, she absolutely deserves one. You are the one who wrote it? She exclaimed. Yes, indeed. She told me she had seen it posted on the Police Benevolent Society and really wanted a copy but wasn't sure how she could have it. I gave it to her. And she told me she'd be reading it every day. Then I drove a little further and found a set of officers and gave them their poems. They said they had heard about me, that I am the sweetest thing. All kinds of officers had mentioned me, giving them the poem and talking with them and opening up to me, and how I insist people, the majority of us, still love our cops. However, she mentioned, we realize no one knows who you are. What is your name? I thought that was cute. I do find that the police have so much unfriendliness that they seem often startled by friendliness, and it takes me a few minutes to really make the point that there's only about 2% of the people who are nasty, and that the generality that America has turned on them is not true. I commend you. I use poetry as much as I can. I don't write about many deep subjects, flying in airplanes and the woman I love, but that's about it. But so I applaud you for doing that. Poetry is a very powerful tool, a compressed language of sorts. It softens the heart, softens what could be something very violent into something to remember who they are. In my day, police were like Andy of Mayberry. They were kind, they protected us, they watched out for us, and no one was afraid of the police, except for the bad guys. Today's police, I have to say, even in my own city, you put out a little different appearance. They dress in black, not blue. They wear multiple weapons, dark sunglasses, shave their heads sometimes, cut their hair very close. They wear their shirts really tight, and their muscles all look big, and they look aggressive, like they want to make you afraid. And all the encounters that I've had with police in the last, I'll say, 10 years have all escalated to the almost violent point. Not by me, I'm as kind as I can be. But it's amazing how ready they are for violence. And I don't mean ready, I mean they're prepared for violence. They're expecting violence. It's sort of like expecting dessert to them. So I will reach out as much as I can to make that softer and kinder. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. Don't go away. I am recording this, so if the modem craps out again, don't worry about it. It's just technical difficulties. We face them from time to time. We live hosts are our own producers. We know how to overcome these things. We'll get the message out. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away.
From the dawn of man, we have turned to nature to help attain balance within ourselves. But somewhere, we lost our way. Western culture is once again remembering the healing benefits of CBD, the non-psychoactive component of the hemp plant. That's why more and more people who use CBD report relief from inflammation and chronic pain, balanced blood sugar and cardiovascular system, relief from muscle tensions, tremors, migraines, headaches, anxiety, depression, and the list goes on. The big question is, where do you get it? Life is a 99% pure CBD oil made with all organic ingredients, and it's available to TFR listeners worldwide. If you use coupon code TFR at checkout, you'll get $5 towards your order. Head on over to ialife.com now. That's AYA life.com.
Hey folks, guess what the number one phrase that Life Change Tea receives by email? You ready? We love this tea. We love this tea. Time after time, week after week, we love this tea. Life Change Tea gives you more energy, a beautiful cleansing, and fulfills its slogan perfectly. The tea that makes you go. So if you want to be on your health game, log on to getthetea.com and order Life Change Super Strength Tea. Packages come in a 1-month supply, and when you brew this stuff, wait until you see the results. Aren't we all about the results? And with a lot of people's health struggling, we can use a little bit of help. Doctors will tell you disease starts in the gut. So log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Be our next email saying, I love this tea. I love this tea. Get the tea at getthetea.com. Helping America one tea bag at a time.
He was the deputy director of MI6, Britain's most senior diplomat. He was knighted by the Queen and in charge of thousands of highly trained spies. But he was also a member of the Pedophile Information Exchange. He had 45 diaries full of sex fantasies with children. His friend was the private secretary of Margaret Thatcher. He strangled a child and hit another with his car. He raped young boys and organized orgies with children for other politicians.
The Enigma Channel, intelligent television for planet Earth. EnigmaTV.com.
You're listening to the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
I've been waiting for this moment since my first breath in. Never would have thought I'd be afraid to begin, but here I am, the edge of the water, wondering if I can swim. Never seem to notice all the days pass through, but in this final moment I'm still chasing the truth. I want an explanation why I can't stay here forever and lie to you. And if I press on, will you wait for me forever, or would it be wrong to ask you to come away? Tell me, will you wait?
Thanks for being out there. It's not forever, but we'll make it through tonight. It's a 3-hour program, and we are almost through 2 of them. I posted this up on my YouTube so you can see it. This is a demonstration using a vape with a guy who is wearing a mask. As you can see, he can vape right through the mask, but the interesting thing is when the vape comes out, you can see that all the droplets, the little micro droplets that go with the vape, go right through that mask, and they come out the top by your cheeks, you know, which that kind of fogs up my safety glasses at work when I'm wearing the safety mask, and I'm wearing my safety glasses at the same time. I can't hardly see walking around the plant because my breath fogs up my safety glasses. But you can see that the mask does absolutely nothing to stop the vape from coming out, doesn't filter it a bit, and viruses are way smaller than these droplets coming out from his mask. I'll let that play while I'm talking about this segment. Maxwell Max. Yep, a judge has ordered the unsealing of a vast tranche of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein, who didn't kill himself, which could shed light on his friendship with powerful men accused of having sex with his underage victims. Judge Loretta Preska said that 80 documents, which will run to hundreds of pages, should be made public within a week. This is going to be absolutely devastating. Not to you, But to all the men that have been caught on Epstein's island, and women, the documents will include depositions from Ghislaine Maxwell, which could explain her alleged role in Epstein's sex trafficking operation. By the way, her camera on her cell has been turned off several times this week while she deals with a difficult time. I know you know what that means. Epstein didn't kill himself. Maybe Ghislaine Maxwell won't either. The papers include flight logs from Epstein's private jets. That means who was on it and how often they were on it and how long they stayed on the island. A deposition testimony in 2016, which Maxwell's lawyers said she was asked intrusive questions about her sex life. Really? Really? Too bad. And police reports from Palm Beach, Florida. Okay, I'll switch off then. I think it's interesting. Don't you? I mean, the vaping sound is carrying through, but I just think it's interesting. It's just cool. All right, let's change screens then. Yeah, I just thought it was interesting. So there you are. They'll also include communications between Maxwell and Epstein from January 2015, when Virginia Roberts made explosive allegations about them in court papers. Virginia Roberts was one of the underage people. She was just 17 years old when she was forced to have sex with Prince Andrew 3 times. The case is separate from the criminal proceedings against Maxwell, 58, who is accused by federal prosecutors of procuring girls as young as 14 for Epstein to abuse. She has pleaded not guilty and is due to stand trial next year. I don't know why it takes so long. Why is it July 2021? Oh, that's right, the election will be over. Well, what they're hoping for, what they're praying for is that Nancy Pelosi will step into the White House. Oh, come on now, be serious. I know you were thinking Joe Biden, but Joe Biden is not the nominee, okay? Joe Biden's not the nominee. Let me just be clear about this, okay? Because you need to know this. I know you're making all these assumptions based on the news that's out there and signs that are out there that say Biden. Oh, they just say Biden, don't they? Because he doesn't have a running mate. Yeah, a running mate hasn't been chosen yet. And that's because Biden isn't the nominee, okay? There's not been enough voting go on. Not all the Democrats have cast their votes yet. They canceled all the primaries. Biden is not the nominee. He's the presumptive nominee. And the reason that the coronavirus was whipped up into such a frenzy is to crush 2 things. First, they had to crush the Trump rallies. They had to crush the Trump rallies. They could not compete with that. And the second was to stop the RNC convention, which was just canceled. They succeeded. They faked a bunch of coronavirus deaths and infections in Florida, which, by the way, several people went to hospitals throughout Florida. The emergency rooms were completely empty. All the rooms were empty. The ER was empty. There is nobody sick in Florida. Nobody is sick in Florida, okay? It's all fake. It's all fake. Everything you see is fake. It was all designed to stop the RNC convention in Jacksonville, which it did. Why? Why was that important? Well, besides all the coverage and the great boost, that candidates get from their convention, it allows the Democrats to cancel their convention in Milwaukee. Why do they want to cancel their convention in Milwaukee? Because they've listened to this program. And they know, I've been saying since last year, that the 2020 Democrat convention in Milwaukee will be a brokered convention. It will be a brokered convention because they don't have a nominee. It means it will go to the floor, and it'll be a free-for-all. It'll be a free-for-all. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will be taking selfies with people to support Bernie Sanders, who will be handing out checks. Everybody is going to be there. Klobuchar, Spartacus, Pocahontas, they'll all be there trying to get the votes because nobody has the 50%. And the superdelegates are uncommitted. Not enough money. Well, I take that back. A lot of money has been spent. Oh, yes, a lot of money has been spent. Not by Joe Biden. Well, yes, by Biden, but who cares? He doesn't even know that it's been spent. It's being spent by Hillary Clinton. If they go to a brokered convention, 1, 2, maybe 3 votes will be taken. And by then, what's going to happen is Hillary Clinton and her entourage is going to come in with brooms, and they're going to sweep the stripper glitter out of the way. And she's going to walk up to the stage and say, "What the hell are you people doing? You're so far left and nobody's going to vote for you. You need somebody in the center." Like me. I beat Donald Trump once and I can beat him again. Hillary Clinton is going to be the nominee, not Joe Biden. Hillary Clinton's never going to let Joe Biden take that seat. He's an invalid. He can barely walk, let alone put together a coherent thought. And it gets worse by the day. He is an invalid and he belongs in a nursing home. So let me go back to this because this is important. All of this blackmail, all the people on this jet, on that island with these underage girls, it's important. The case ruled Thursday of this last week. That was originally brought by Roberts. I told you, Virginia Roberts. She was 14. She was 17 at the time she was forced to have sex with Prince Edward several times. She's now a 36-year-old mother of 3 who lives in Australia and goes by her married name Virginia Giuffre. She sued Maxwell in 2015 for defamation because, she didn't want this dragged up any more than anybody else. But Maxwell accused her of lying, so she sued. Roberts said in court filings that Maxwell recruited her and other girls into a sex trafficking ring for politically connected and financially powerful people. That's the list that's important. That's the list that's important. The case was settled in 2017 for an undisclosed sum, but media organizers sued for documents in the case to be made public. So enter Judge Loretta Preska. Yes, during the hearing at Manhattan's federal court, Judge Preska said Maxwell's right to privacy was outweighed by the need for the documents to become public. She went through the dozens of documents, which included Giuffre's depositions and various dull-sounding legal papers. The contents, however, could be explosive and may contain fresh evidence against the wealthy elite who socialized with Epstein on the island, who frolicked in the sunshine with underage girls and boys. After the ruling, Maxwell's lawyer, Laura Menninger, asked for a 2-week delay in the unsealing so they could file an appeal in the Second Circuit in New York. Menninger said, quote, "There have been some significant changes with respect to my client's positions and perhaps known to everyone listening to this while we were speaking about a potential ongoing criminal investigation before. Since that time, Ms. Maxwell has been indicted and a trial has been scheduled. Now we are in a vastly different position and have grave concerns about our client's ability to receive a fair trial, given the intense media scrutiny around anything that is unsealed," close quote. Well, Virginia's lawyer, Sigrid Macaulay, said she wanted the documents made public as swiftly as possible. And guess what? Judge Preska said this last week. If the Second Circuit had not ruled within a week, then the files should be made public. Now, when that happens, all hell is going to break loose. Oh, yeah. Believe me, there are people out there sweating spinal fluid that summer at Jeffrey Epstein's island with a 14-year-old girl. Oh, yeah. They're sweating spinal fluid because their whole career is on the line. Congressmen, senators, princes, sultans, former presidents, former first ladies, all of this is on the line, people, and we want Maxwell to live. We want Maxwell to live, but a year is a long time, people, a long time. People, we should press for expediency in this. Maxwell is afforded a speedy trial under the Constitution. A year is too long. A year puts it past the election. And if Hillary Clinton can do what I think she's powerful enough to do, maybe even eliminate the president, fumigate him or whatever out of the White House, eliminate the president, and thus step into the White House. But if she beats him in a fixed election, or it's even close, she's going to sue. And we won't even know who's president until the summer of next year. We won't even know who's president. So I put forth a couple of ideas. I don't know what you think about this. You can't put it in the chat room because the chat room has been nuked by the lightning damage to my modem. But this is being recorded, and it's going to go up. I promise you it's going to go up. So here are my questions. What happens if President Trump issues an executive order that says the integrity of our elections has been compromised? It has. It has. We have already had a report of pallets of ballots from South Carolina that have been found in Maryland. In Maryland. Now, let me ask you a question. If these are ballots that were cast in South Carolina and they're in Maryland, somebody's going to jail. Somebody in South Carolina is going to jail. Those ballots should never have left the state. Those paper ballots should never have left the state. But hear me out. And if you're listening, Mr. President, or one of your staffers, or Alex Marlowe's staffers, because tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, Alex Marlowe goes live with Breitbart Radio and often uses the material that I purport right here on this program tonight, because we're having an effect. We're having a big effect out there. Here's my idea. Those ballots didn't come from South Carolina. Those ballots are going to South Carolina. Those ballots were created, voted, and stacked, all ready to go. And they're being stored in Maryland. And when the time is right, when the voting happens and all the mayhem travels westward across the country, those ballots will be shipped to South Carolina. And I would venture to say in that warehouse, there are ballots for every single swing state out there. North Carolina, Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Minnesota. I'll guarantee you there are pallets of pre-voted ballots, state ballots, counterfeit as they may be. Maybe they were made in China. I don't know. But those ballots that are in Maryland right now that say they came from South Carolina, they didn't. They're going to South Carolina. Those ballots are counterfeit, and they have been pre-voted by the people down at Ballots R Us, and they're going to be shipped in to destroy the integrity of the election. So if President Trump were to say the integrity of our election is so much in question, with cheat by mail, with everything that's going on with the census, with all the riots and intimidation, people are afraid to go to the polls because they don't want to get beat up. They don't want their car keyed or burned. They don't want to get shot. So President Trump should postpone the elections until COVID and these riots are no longer a threat. He can do it. He has the power to do it. He can also adjourn Congress. He has the power to do that. Section 2, Article 3. Article 3, Section 2. He can adjourn Congress. President Lincoln did it. It can be done. He could force Congress to adjourn, in which case the Senate only would be running the country. It could happen. All this taking place is designed to postpone any revelation with Ghislaine Maxwell and the revelation of all of this blackmail until after the election. So I say either bring it out, damn it, or postpone the election until further notice. President Trump could be in there for 8, 10, 12 more years, 15 more years, if that's what it takes. We need to restore the integrity of our election system. We do not have it right now. We don't have it. There won't be a Democrat nominee. There won't be a Democrat nominee. There's no candidate. There are lots of candidates right now, but a lot of them have dropped out. Some, like Bernie Sanders, have kept their delegates, and they're kind of sitting back, waiting for Joe to fall down. I mean, he's already fallen because he can't finish a sentence, but I mean physically fall down. He's going to be walking, and he's going to need a wheelchair because he's an invalid. China Joe Biden, the stress of the evil that he has done, the involvement with the murder, the graft, the money laundering, the bribery, the corruption, and the espionage is finally coming to bear on him. Nobody can stay above it their entire life. Eventually it comes to bear, and the Dark Lord will betray you and leave you to your own demise. And Joe Biden is slipping fast. I don't think he can make it 100 days. I don't think he's going to make it to their own convention, and I don't think that he is going to survive this campaign. I look for him to have a severe stroke and not even be able to speak in the next few days, maybe the next few weeks, but he's under a lot of stress. He's taking a lot of drugs, and he's dosing up on Prevagen just to get through what's on the teleprompter. That's why they stopped the RNC convention, because they need to stop the DNC convention so they can crown their candidate. They don't have one yet, their nominee. All right, let's talk a little bit about China's space. China's Tianwen-1 launched Thursday of this week to Mars. Yes, initiating a phase of deep space and interplanetary exploration. Who's partnering with them? No one. They stole the technology that they needed to build the spacecraft, and they launched their own. A Long March 5 rocket launched the Tianwen-1 orbiter and rover from Wenchang Satellite Launch Center at 12:41 a.m. Eastern on Thursday. Successful trans-Mars injection was confirmed around 40 minutes later by the China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, which is just next door to the Deputy Chief Director of Paper Towels. The flight path took the Long March 5 over the Philippines and close to the capital of Manila. Spent stages were planned to drop into the surrounding seas. China's Yuanwang-class tracking ships assisted launch operations, along with support from the European Space Agency's facilities. First acquisition of the spacecraft, as it separated from its Long March 5 launcher, was expected to be made by the 15-meter antenna in Coro, French Guiana. The roughly 5 metric ton wet mass spacecraft is now on a 7-month journey to the Red Planet. It's a narrow window, this Hohmann maneuver, because the orbit of Earth and the orbit of Mars are quite a bit different in speed. So Earth is, of course, 365 days around the sun, and Mars is about twice that, a little over twice that. And so the two planets only line up going in the same direction around the sun for about a 2-month window, and you have to launch in that window, and if you miss it, you're going to be lost in space. The Tianwen-1 mission is a major landmark project in the process of building China's aerospace power, and a milestone project for China's aerospace to go further and deeper into space. Tianwen-1 is due to arrive at Mars in February of 2021, entering a highly elliptical orbit. The spacecraft will then move to a near-polar orbit with a periapsis of 265 kilometers for 2 to 3 months before the rover landing attempt. The Indians tried to land a rover on the moon, and it splatted, so we'll see what happens to the Chinese one. The orbiter and rover together carry 13 science payloads for a range of detections of the Martian atmosphere, magnetosphere, surface, subsurface, and climate. Tianwen-1 is China's first independent interplanetary mission. Missions to near-Earth objects, a Mars sample return, possible Voyager-like probes, and a Jupiter system orbiter are planned for the decade ahead. China is launching in a big way into the space programs and will compete against the free world in space. China also launched a lander to the far side of the moon. I have said and will say again, the country that controls the high ground of the moon will control the world. So I think, I hope, I pray that I am correct, but I fear that I am wrong. And that is that private corporations will lead the way, and we will land on the Shackelford plane, and we will be able to tap into the crater that is loaded with helium-3, we believe, and we will be able to recover that. But I think it's going to be private corporations that do it. I hope that I am right. I fear that I am wrong. There's a delayed landing attempt that China is involved in. The delay will allow the orbiter to survey the candidate landing sites with its cameras and provide the lander with the data required to make its landing attempt. China has selected a portion of Utopia Planitia south of Viking 2 as the landing area for the 240 kilogram rover. That's about 600 pounds. The selection was made based on science goals and engineering constraints, which include low elevation to provide more atmosphere and time to slow the lander's descent, as well as the solar power needs of the rover. The landing ellipsis will be 100 by 20 kilometers. We'll be right back after this break. Don't go away. More X Squared Radio right after this.
Hi, my name is Ella, and I'm 10 years old. I'm one of the millions of children born to parents suffering from the sheeple virus. Symptoms include the inability to think for oneself, the attention span of a goldfish, and a strong belief in government and the mainstream media. It is estimated that 1 out of every 2 children are being raised by parents infected with the sheeple virus. But there is a cure. For as little as 19 cents per day, you can become a TFR supporter and help children like me get their daily dose of truth. Together, we will make sure every child has protection from deception.
An agreement in principle. I'm Joe Chiro, Fox News. That's the words of White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, who says that agreement has been reached between Senate Republicans and the administration for the next coronavirus stimulus bill.
Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, exclusively on Fox News Sunday, said a GOP-backed bill is coming Monday and will hopefully be passed quickly.
So that we deal with the unemployment and all the other issues, paycheck protection plan, tax credits to rehire people, and money for schools.
The Democratic-led House passed a stimulus package in May that would keep assistance at $600 per week. That expires this weekend.
Fox's Gernal Scott. Mnuchin also said the package will contain extended unemployment benefits of 70% of wages before those job losses. More protests are expected in some major cities after another night of unrest. Last night, police in Seattle declared a riot and arrested 45 people. 21 officers were injured.
Riots were declared in many cities across the country. Groups like Pop Mob and Youth Liberation Front were calling on people across the country and other cities to join them in their fight against law enforcement, and many thousands did, mostly young people. And the result was a lot of property damage, a lot of looting, many arrests, and one death in Texas.
Fox's Dan Springer in Seattle. And the late Congressman and civil rights leader John Lewis's body will travel from Alabama to Washington, D.C. this week to lie in state at the U.S. Capitol. A procession carried his casket over the Edmund Pettus Bridge earlier today in Selma, Alabama, the same bridge where he and other civil rights marchers were beaten 55 years ago, and what's now known as Bloody Sunday, a key event in the fight for voting rights. America is listening to Fox News.
You must unite what has been set aside.
We are TFR, Truth Frequency Radio.
Hey, welcome back. Hour 3 of X Squared Radio, coming to you live through the America Free Radio Studios, an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. We are streaming live on the Truth Frequency Radio Network and also on YouTube. I have so many notes tonight. I didn't get a chance to go through all of them, but you can. So all you have to do is go to my website, americafreeradio.com, americafreeradio.com, and click on the program notes. If you click on the program notes, all you have to do is select the year, which is 2020, and that will take you to a calendar. It's the entire year. Every single solitary Sunday is in there, including today. If you click on that, it will open for you my notes. Tonight I'm using about 38 pages of notes. Obviously, I'm not going to get through all of them, but there are links, there are videos, there's all kinds of good stuff for you if you want to do more research on this. And I would be remiss, because you're only getting part of the story about the Battle of Portland. So I want to give you a Battle of Portland update. We are approaching day 60 of the violent riots in Portland, Oregon. The media would have you believe that these are peaceful protests hijacked by a handful of violent agitators. That is a lie. That is fake news. At this point, none of the 2,000 or so people out of 650,000 who live in Portland who are gathering each night are peaceful protesters. All of them, every single one of them, are aiding and abetting the destruction and violence knowingly and willingly. They're coming prepared for it. The Department of Homeland Security released a statement describing the actions of the violent rioters, and I quote, "Consistent with tactics employed in previous nights, rioters attacked federal officers' eyes with lasers, which can cause permanent blindness. About 10:30 p.m. local time, rioters attempted to push over the fence, while rioters also started to throw flaming objects over it. Mortar-style fireworks continued to be launched at federal property and officers as well. These are weapons. At around 11:15 p.m. local time, DHS officers continued to urge those present from attempting to damage or breach the fence. Half an hour later, DHS officers moved out to defend the fence from rioters and were immediately attacked with lasers. Rioters continued to throw rocks and commercial-grade fireworks. They also began to launch a caustic substance resembling paint at officers inside the perimeter of the fence. A half hour later, 15 minutes later at midnight local time, the doors of the Edith Green Federal Building were vandalized. Half an hour later at 12:30 local time, Portland police declared an unlawful and riotous assembly. Both the Portland police and federal law enforcement began to make warnings about the riot declaration. Around the 1 a.m. hour, multiple Molotov cocktails were thrown over the fence at the courthouse as rioters continued to attack officers with mortar-style fireworks and lasers. Let's be perfectly clear about this. We're talking about the Battle of Portland. Any single person on the streets giving cover to this violent mayhem, moms or veterans or whatever, they are themselves a participant in the rioting and the destruction. Your phones are being grabbed using Stingray. All of your contacts, all your texts, all your phone calls, all your emails, all the photographs that are on your phone are now part of the federal government. They know who you are. They know your credit rating. They know where you work. They know how much money you make. They know what you shop for. They know where you live. They know who your children are. This is not tens of thousands of Americans coming together to have their voices heard and petition the government for better police practices. These people don't even have any discernible demands. Nothing. There is literally nothing that authorities could do or concede that would make them stop their wanton destruction. If the police left, it would be worse. So allow me a moment to add here to address the incredibly racist nature of the media's coverage. If these were primarily black people committing arson, shooting fireworks, and attempting to blind federal officers with lasers, there would be wall-to-wall coverage of the mayhem. But no, these are middle-class white kids who have the corporate media and the Democrat Party in their back pocket. We're talking about really bad white privilege here. What is happening every night in the Battle of Portland has nothing to do with peaceful protest. It hasn't for months. It is an organized militia seeking to destroy federal property and undermine the authority of law enforcement. But don't worry. Once the black-clad, helmeted, Molotov cocktail-wielding insurgents abolish the police and tar and feather poor Mayor Ted Wheeler, they will be there to protect you, I'm sure. There will be no more police brutality because there won't be any more police. Antifa will decide what property belongs to whom, and they will settle disputes with their equally loving iron fist. Make absolutely no mistake, that is the goal of every single person who shows up to assist these criminals in their nightly riots. At this point, It is hopeless to imagine that China Joe Biden, supposedly the great centrist, or any Democrat, will even call mildly for a suspension of the violence and destruction. It is equally hopeless that the media will do so. As long as the efforts hurt Trump, after all, it will be worth it come November. 100 days. 100 days to the election. But then what? Huh? If Biden moves into 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue next year, will the anarchists stop? Will they pack up their tents and say, mission accomplished? Don't you count on it. Don't you count on it. The Democrats' alliance with these people who seek to destroy the country is not at question at this point. This is the Democrats' base. This is the future they want for America. And we know that because good old Joe Biden, good old China Joe, will not say even the slightest word against it. So, 77% of America is against this rioting. 77% of America is fearful to express their political views. They're afraid to put an American flag in front of their house. They're afraid to put a Trump sticker on their car because they're afraid that these rioters or other ones like them will destroy their car, will follow them to the grocery and beat them up in the parking lot, will follow them home and burn their house down. These people are violent killers. Last night in Austin, they were there, yelling and screaming and megaphoning, and no one paid them any attention. They were in the street, jumping up and down and yelling in their megaphones, and there was tons of streaming video out there, tons of it. But in the crowd was the violence, waiting, seething, hating. And guess what happened? A car, a black car, came along, tried to make its way through the crowd. They tried to stop the car, as they always do. You have to stop. You have to kneel to the black ribbon. You have to pay homage. But the car didn't want to stop. In the crowd, one of 3 individuals armed. This particular guy was interviewed. His name is Garrett. He was interviewed earlier in the day with his AK-47 hanging around his neck and his face masked all the way up to the bottom of his eyes and wearing a hat. He was interviewed. What are you doing out here? Oh, I'm just out here with my gun, because, people are afraid. And my roommate, he said, was just arrested, and so now I'm alone, and so I'm out here. So what's the gun for? Well, the gun is for because, people are afraid, people won't mess with me, and, everybody's just a bunch of female body parts. And so that was the end of the interview. That guy, Mr. Garrett, approached that car with his AK-47. Oh, he was armed. He'd been looking for a fight for days. The rage, you could see it in his eyes. He approached the car with his AK-47. And the car felt threatened. So the car shot first. 9 rounds I counted on the video that I watched. Mr. Garrett was killed that night on the streets. He won't be brandishing his AK-47 anymore. That fight that he wanted, it came to him. Voting the American way. All Americans who claim to care about voting rights should be cheering the Trump administration's new policy on congressional apportionment, which would help restore representative government by transferring political power from illegal immigrants back to you, the hands of the citizens. As you know, a big stink was raised, not about Trump asking for illegals to declare whether they're citizens or not on the census. That wasn't the question at all. It was the process by which he did it. Again, pushing a little bit too hard, pushing a little too fast. The Supreme Court didn't like the way that he wanted that question put on. And so he said, fine, take it off. Take it off then. We don't need to know how many citizens are in this country. But with an executive order that he issued this week, he said that illegals or foreign citizens cannot be counted in the apportionment of congressmen. Because you know, congressmen are apportioned every 10 years by the population in various areas. President Trump just wants to make sure, and I think you feel the same way, that this congressional apportionment be done based on the population of citizens living in the area, not foreign citizens, but American citizens. Congress is there to represent Americans in Congress. The Democrats want foreign citizens to be represented by congressmen in Congress. Why? Because they almost always vote Democrat. They can be counted on. So they want another 10 or 12 congressmen in Congress to represent illegals. Well, you and I both know that just is wrong. The Founding Fathers wouldn't allow it. We wouldn't allow it. I won't allow it. And President Trump won't allow it. So our political class granted power to those unlawfully in America. There are about 25 million of them. And it ought to outrage anyone who cares about the sanctity of the ballot and the rule of law. They might not be able to vote, but they'll have a congressman in Congress that can vote on their behalf. The Trump administration, on behalf of forgotten Americans, has been uniquely willing to challenge a convention that has long gone unquestioned. Prior to the release of the president's new memorandum on excluding illegal aliens from the apportionment base following the 2020 census, the federal government distributed congressional seats based on the total number of people residing in an area, including illegal aliens, rather than on the number of people legitimately represented, namely, you and me, citizens. Should the president's memorandum hold, and I believe that it will, the United States will now exclude illegal immigrants from the population counts used to apportion House seats. This is right as a matter of law, fairness, and common sense. Now, the issue is, of course, that 65% approximately of the census has already been answered. Those things have been mailed out. People have gone online. They've filed their stuff. Nothing about illegal aliens is mentioned or counted in that 65% of the census already collected. 35% is going to be door to door, foot by foot, with census counters going out there and counting heads. Now, they can't ask the question either, but somewhere along the line, somebody needs to make the determination how many foreign citizens are living illegally inside our country. It's going to be counted. The president's memorandum lays out the executive's authority by statute and precedent to determine who constitutes the whole number of persons in each state, and to settle the apportionment of representatives among the states. More fundamentally, although, neither the courts nor Congress has settled the issue. It is legally dubious that illegal aliens should be considered persons to be counted in the census, which is used for apportionment for Congress, pursuant to the relevant portions of the Constitution. As constitutional scholar Dr. John Eastman notes, the Constitution begins, "We the people of the United States," not "we the people of the world," not "we the people of all countries living inside the United States," or "we any foreign nationals who happen to be in the United States when a census is taken." Be clear about it. The 14th Amendment, which concerned not illegal aliens, but primarily freed slaves, addressed per Section 1, and I quote, "all persons born or naturalized in the United States, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, close quote. And Section 2, concerning apportionment, calling for counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed, close quote. Almost certainly referring to the primary subject of the amendment, citizens, for whom the founders crafted the Constitution, not foreign citizens living inside the country illegally. Including illegal immigrants in the figures used to distribute congressional seats also makes a mockery of the one person, one vote principle. How can you apportion Congress to people who cannot vote? It's a mockery. If one congressional district consisted disproportionately of illegal immigrants and another of voting eligible citizens, the power of the voter in the former district is vastly greater than the power of the voter in the latter. Americans in areas of the country that are not sanctuaries for illegal aliens see their votes diluted, canceled, wiped out, and they're effectively disenfranchised by illegals living in this country. At an even more basic level, as President Donald Trump says, we should not give political power to people who should not be here at all. To understand the cost of the status quo, consider the practical effect of counting illegal aliens for purposes of congressional apportionment in 2020. According to the White House, a single state includes 2.2 million illegal aliens, more than 6% of that state's population. Counting this population would result in allocating 2 to 3 more congressional seats to that state than it would have otherwise received. Similarly, a December 2019 Center for Immigration Studies analysis estimated that by counting illegal aliens in the 2020 census, the federal government would be redistributing 3 seats, one each, from Ohio, Alabama, and Minnesota to California, New York, and Texas. The effect is more pronounced as we broaden the population from illegal aliens to all non-citizens. Per the Center for Immigration Studies, if one counts illegal immigrants and their U.S.-born minor children, children would not have been counted in the census had their parents not arrived or remained in the country illegally prior to having them. The federal government would redistribute 5 seats. Looking at all non-citizens and their U.S.-born minor children, the federal government would redistribute 10 seats overall. 10 seats. In a country as closely divided as ours, illegal aliens and certainly all non-citizens have a material effect on representation. That the Trump administration is focused solely on the illegal population rather than all non-citizens, when a case can be made that solely the voting eligible population should be counted for purposes of apportionment, shows how relatively narrowly tailored the president's policy is. Now, there are detractors that are fighting against this policy. I want to share with you their position. The reason I speak in hypotheticals and not the policy's modest focus is that this resistance has announced its intention to fight this policy in the courts. They're going to tie up the 2020 census for years. This is another round in a battle that started with the Trump administration's effort to reinstate a citizenship question on the census. It used to be there. It used to read, is this person a citizen of the United States? That's it. That is the question. What is wrong with that question? Nothing is wrong with that question. At the time, I surmised that one reason the administration's opponents fought against including this question was that if Americans learned of the size of the non-citizen population and its effect on both representation and the allocation of hundreds of billions of federal dollars per year, they would be furious. They would absolutely lose their minds, because you think it's 11 million. I think it's more closely to 25 to 30 million. That's like 10% of the country. The left, the Democrats, ultimately prevailed in the Supreme Court, not because the question was illegal, but as I said, it was a technicality, ostensibly because the court disapproved of the process by which the administration went about adding the question. By the time it was settled, it's too late. It's already 2020. It appeared once again that the court was making our government one of men rather than laws, judging on the basis of politics rather than the merits, because of the majority's antipathy to Trump. The Trump administration's reasoning behind putting this policy into practice is both reasonable and it is prudent. This is what the president says, and I agree with it, but I want you to listen to it. Affording congressional representation and therefore formal political influence to states on account of the presence within their borders of aliens who have not followed the steps to secure a lawful immigration status under our laws undermines those principles. Many of these aliens entered the country illegally in the first place. Increasing congressional representation based on the presence of aliens who are not in a lawful immigration status would also create perverse incentives, encouraging violations of federal law. States adopting policies that encourage illegal aliens to enter this country and that hobble federal efforts to enforce the immigration laws passed by Congress should not be rewarded with greater representation in that Congress. I have accordingly determined that respect for the law and protection of the integrity of the democratic process warrant the exclusion of illegal aliens from the apportionment base. Now, if our courts, and I told you this is going to be fought for years, if our courts cannot see the merit to this argument, American citizens are going to be rendered defenseless once again on a fundamental matter. Striking down this policy would demonstrate yet again that it is only Trump and a tiny cadre of like-minded officials in the executive and legislative branches standing up for justice for Americans against a political class that opposes us, and I might add, an evil reign of the judges. So, now you know what's going on. Now you know why the census is such a hot issue. And even though 65% of it has already been counted, by sampling, we're going to be able to recoup. We're going to be able to make a judgment based on this. And we're going to be able to prevent the Democrats from seizing control of this country by counting illegal aliens and apportioning that for use of creating more Congress people. Right now we have 438 people in Congress. They want to make it about 448. If they do, if they add 10 more Democrats, it is going to be hell to pay. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away.
The reviews for Extendivite are amazing. Here are some from Amazon. By Christine, great for heart palpitations. By Ann, before I started using this product, every afternoon my ankles and my hands would be swollen. That doesn't happen anymore. So if that part of their advertising is true, I have to assume that the rest of it is also. Not to mention that when I had my yearly blood test, only a few weeks after beginning to use this product, my cholesterol had dropped over 30 points. I'm going to continue to take it. By Croc, I love this product. It really works. By Brad, works great, thank you. Tell us your story. Get your Extendivite today. To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Poor water quality is a major health issue, and it's only getting worse. Municipalities can't keep up, standards have dropped, and pollutants are increasing. Where does it all end? It ends by keeping the pollutants outside of your home with HydroCare's advanced systems available at Wave Home Solutions. No less than the best purification materials and processes have been developed by HydroCare to provide you with healthy, clean water for drinking, cooking, and showering. HydroCare far surpasses the competition in removing chlorine, odors, iron, lead, chemicals, limescale, and much more. Don't settle for less when it comes to your water. We'll take care of the toughest water problems for you, whether it's from a city or well source. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, call 888-997-WAVE. That's 888-997-WAVE. Or go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
Travis Cook, America's Evil Genius, here to invite you to join us every Tuesday afternoon here on Truth Frequency Radio. No, on our show you will not see a bunch of three-piece suits or a cocktail party, and you certainly won't see a bunch of inside the Beltway banter. But you will see eye-gouging, crotch-kicking, no-holds-barred political discussion, the likes of which you won't see anywhere else in media. America's Evil Genius. We come to you every Tuesday from the outskirts of war-torn St. Louis, Missouri, where there's always a good race rider sex scandal just around the corner. Join us every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, and noon on the left coast right here on TFRLive.com. America's Evil Genius, Travis Cook, on TruthFrequencyRadio.com.
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are TFR, your protection from deception.
Final segment of tonight's program. Before we continue, I want to let you know that August 1st, I have another Manifestation Masterclass. So if you want to attend that, all you have to do is go to brooksagnew.com, click on the webinars link. Also, coming up in August is the Meet the Venusians conference. We talked with Rob and with Ray a couple of weeks ago here on the program. We may have them on again with a couple more of the speakers from that event. This is going to be the first big conference of the year. It's going to be at Mount Shasta. You'll really enjoy it. All you have to do is go to upcoming events at brooksagnew.com. You get a discount by going that way, and you might even be able to attend for free. There are all kinds of terms and conditions that you can attend. You can volunteer. There are things you can do to get in for free and hear some really, really great speakers. So don't forget, do that. That's all the advertisement time I want to spend, and we will continue. All right, here we go. I want to continue to talk about this a little bit. Cultural Marxism. You've heard this term popping up from time to time. It is a red herring, okay? A red herring is something that misleads or distracts from a relevant or important question. It's a fallacy. It's a literary device, okay? Cultural Marxism. So America is not really losing to cultural Marxism. What you're seeing in the Battle of Portland, what you're seeing in firearms accidents in Louisville, Kentucky, or people defending themselves in Austin, Texas. This is not cultural Marxism. The historical namesake and obvious parallel is the Cultural Revolution, in China, which lasted from 1966 to 1976. Its stated goal was to purge capitalist and traditional elements from society and to substitute a new way of thinking based on Mao's own beliefs. The epic struggle for control and power waged war against anybody on the wrong side of that idea. And that's what you see. The instant you put on a, make space great again, or make America great again, or a Space Force hat, the first thing that happens is the mob, even if it's only a mob of one person, they're a mob in their mind. The first thing they're going to do is attack you. You've already seen it happen on social media, any social media that you're on. The instant you say, I think a lot of my president, I think Trump's doing a good job, they're immediately going to attack you. Usually it's going to be with some kind of name calling or profanity. This is the Cultural Revolution. Now, to set the mobs on somebody, one needed only to tie him to an official blacklist like the four olds: old customs, old culture, old habits, and old ideas. China's young people and urban workers formed Red Guard units to go after whomever was outed. And that's what happens today. The young people set on you. Don't wear your mask in public and watch what happens. You don't need to convince people to wear a mask. All you have to do is tell the people that the people that aren't wearing masks are trying to kill them. And that's how you make it happen. Violence? Oh, yes, please. When Mao launched the movement in May of 1966, he told his mobs to bombard the headquarters and made clear that to rebel is justified. You've heard that, right? To riot is justified. To riot is American. We've heard that from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We've heard that from Nancy Pelosi. We've heard that from Chuck Schumer. Mao said revisionists should be removed through violent class struggle. The old thinkers were everywhere and were systematically trying to preserve their power and subjugate the people. The mobs took the task to heart. Red Guards destroyed historical relics. They destroyed statues. They destroyed artifacts. They ransacked cultural and religious sites. Libraries and churches were burned. Religion was considered a tool of capitalists, and so the churches were destroyed. Even the Temple of Confucius was wrecked. Eventually, the Red Guards moved on to openly killing people who did not think as they did. Where were the police? The cops were told not to interfere in Red Guard activities, and if they did, the National Police Chief pardoned the guards for any crimes. This is exactly what we're seeing happen today. The rioters are summarily let go. The looters are never prosecuted. The people pulling down the statues, nothing happened to them. And then the executive order came from President Trump. He's trying to head off this cultural revolution of the Marxists. Another thing was singled out: education. As it was, the way the old values were preserved and transmitted. Teachers, particularly those at universities, were considered the stinking old ninth and were widely persecuted. The lucky ones just suffered the public humiliation of shaved heads, while others were tortured. Many were slaughtered or harassed into suicide. We've seen that over and over again. Police are committing suicide because they cannot quit and they cannot put up with this violence. They cannot put up with being rejected by society and vilified by politicians. Schools and universities eventually closed down, and over 10 million former students were sent to the countryside to labor under the Down to the Countryside movement. A lost generation was abandoned to fester, uneducated, Red Guard pogroms eventually came to include the cannibalization of revisionists. After all, as Mao said, a revolution is not a dinner party. The Cultural Revolution, it was known as, destroyed China's economy and traditional culture, leaving behind a possible death toll ranging from 1 to 20 million. Nobody really knows. It was a war on the way people think, and it failed. One immediate consequence of the revolution's failure was the rise in power of the military after regular people decided they'd had enough and wanted order restored. China then became even more of a capitalist society than it had ever imagined in pre-revolution days. That's the way it goes. The pendulum swings. It's probably a longer version of the events than a column like this would usually feature. A tragedy on the scale of the Holocaust in terms of human lives. An attempt to destroy culture on a level that would embarrass the Taliban. This topic is not widely taught in American colleges, never mind in China. But we're repeating it. We're doing it right now. We're tearing down our statues. We've closed our schools. We're trying to open private schools, charter schools, church schools, home schools, anything to get kids educated where they can read and write and do mathematics, where they can get a decent job later in their lives, where they learn how to learn. Break away from the dumbing down and the stupidity of things like Common Core and this cultural transformation that Barack Obama started 10 years ago. This has to be taught because history rhymes. Chinese students are again outing teachers, sometimes via cell phone videos, for improper speech, teaching hurtful things from the past, using the wrong vocabulary. Other intellectuals are harassing online. Intellectuals are harassed online for holding other positions or lose their jobs for teaching novels with the wrong values. Once abhorred as anti-free speech, most UC Berkeley students would likely now agree that such steps are proper, keeping Ben out of speaking there, or Ann Coulter, or me, or Dinesh D'Souza. That's okay. That's okay. That's proper. In Minnesota, To Kill a Mockingbird and Huckleberry Finn are banned. Why? Because the fictional characters use a racial slur. There are no statues to the Cultural Revolution here or in China. Nobody builds monuments to chaos. But it's never really about the statues anyway, is it? In America, we moved quickly from demands to tear down the statue of Robert E. Lee, very quickly to Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Christopher Columbus, basically any Caucasian, including white Jesus. Of course, it was never going to stop with Confederate generals, because it was not really about racism any more than the Cultural Revolution was really about capitalism. This is about rewriting history for political ends, both short-term power grabs, trying to create a candidate called not Trump. It isn't really about Trump. They don't dislike Trump. They love Trump. They loved him writing checks. They loved taking pictures and selfies with him at their events, at wrestling and concerts and contests and TV shows. They loved it. They loved him. It's not him they hate. It's you. It's you they hate. The purpose is to embed a new metaphysics into our society, a new religion. The ideas centered on there being only one accepted way of thought. It is a tool of control. Put a mask on, or you're trying to kill us. Kneel and embrace the black ribbon. It remains to be seen where America goes next in its own nascent cultural revolution that seems to be burning brightly on the West Coast. Like slow dancing in 8th grade, maybe nothing will come of this. These early stages where the victims are Uncle Ben and Aunt Jemima, someone using her temper like walking a dog in Central Park, some Karen and canceled celebrities. It's a far cry from the millions murdered for the same goals in China, but not so far, really. Not so far. Much of what appears revolutionary is just internet pranking and common looting amplified by the agendaized media. One writer sees cancel culture as a game, the point of which is to impose unemployment on people as a form of recreation. But we're seeing it. We're seeing yesterday as the opening of baseball, teams made of millionaires, the best athletes in the world in that sport, forced to kneel before the black ribbon so everyone could see. America had surrendered. America had surrendered and knelt before the black ribbon. In America, these are spreading outward from our universities so that everywhere today, movies, TV, publishing, music, news, ads, sports, it's an Oberlin where in the name of free speech, hate speech is banned. And in the name of safety, dangerous ideas, bare faces, and the people who display them, they're not only not discussed, but they're canceled. They're shot down via the projectile of the heckler's veto, unfriended. Oh, they're demonetized. They're deleted. They're deplatformed, demeaned, chased after by mobs, both real and online, in a horrible blend of self-righteousness and cyberbullying. They don't believe in a marketplace of ideas. Ideas to the mob are either right or wrong, and the wrong ones must be banished. The choices to survive the mobs are conformity or silence. In China, you showed conformity by carrying around Mao's little red book, and in America, you wear a filthy surgical mask to the supermarket. I went to Walmart yesterday to buy some envelopes so I could mail some more books out to those of you that have signed up for my classes. Oh yes, the mask police were there at the door. You must wear a mask. I said, no. And I smiled. You know why? Because I could. And I walked in that store. And I was the only person in the entire Walmart with a smile on my face. I grabbed my shopping cart, went back, got my envelopes, tape, a few pens, walked to the self-checkout, scanned my stuff, smiled at the lady who was wearing a mask overlooking the robotic self-checkout, and walked out of the store. Nobody said anything to me, because in America, we have the right to show our face. And it's a violation of the American with Disabilities Act to require me to wear a mask to do business. Yeah. So don't be intimidated. The philosophical spadework for an American cultural revolution is already done. The soil's already turned over and the seeds are already being planted. Switch the terms capitalism and revisionism with racism and white supremacy in some of Mao's speeches, and guess what you get? You get a decent speech draft for a Black Lives Matter rally. Actually, you can keep Mao's references to destroying capitalism, as they track pretty closely with the progressive thought in 2020 America. History is not there to make anyone feel safe or justify current theories about policing. History exists so we can learn from it. And for us to learn from it, it has to exist for us to study. To be offended, to be uncomfortable with it is the point. We're supposed to be uncomfortable with it. To bathe in it, to taste it, bitter or sweet. And when you wash your hands of an idea, you lose all the other ideas that grew to challenge it. Think of those as antibodies fighting a disease. What happens when they're no longer at the ready? What happens when a body forgets how to fight off an illness? What happens when a society forgets how to challenge a bad idea with a better one? You get sick and you die. I just got to tell you, there's a lot going on out there. Many people wonder if the end of the world as we know it has already occurred. In preparedness parlance, there's an acronym called Teotwaki, which stands for the end of the world as we know it. This term has been treated with a mixture of affection and contempt by many, including preppers. Lots of people think about it. On a serious side, some have suggested that it will be abrupt, that it will be unexpected, such as an EMP attack or a comet or a meteor of some kind. But for most people, the thought of the end of the world as we know it was a comfortable, distant, and kind of a dreamy, unlikely idea, unless it already happened and we didn't notice. This is the point recently raised by Lisa Bedford. She's also known as the survival mom. This past spring, while America was busy shopping for toilet paper and hand sanitizer and panicking at their shortages, the end of the world as we know it happened. The end of the world arrived. It slipped right past us while we were all distracted. But make no mistake, we are unlikely as a country and a world to ever go back to normal, right? We aren't going to turn a corner at some point and magically it will be as though the pandemic never happened. You got to feel that now, right? It's been long enough. It's been violent enough. At first, I was inclined to take this as hyperbole, but then I realized, wow, she's right. You remember the acronym, the world as we know it. It didn't come in the form of a zombie apocalypse. It came in the form of everything else. I mean, think about it. Pandemic, lockdowns, medical tyranny, school closures, bank holidays, small business failures by the hundreds of thousands, massive unemployment to the tunes of hundreds of millions of people, shortages of toilet paper, hand sanitizer, meat, flour, yeast, coins, shortages and delayed shipments on everything from garden seeds to bicycles. You tried to buy a bicycle lately? Have you really? Mask requirements, church closures, bans on any mass gatherings, concerts, festivals, sports, riots. Riots are okay. Toppling statues, erasing American history, calls to defund the police, lootings, arson on a scale never before seen in the United States. Widespread law enforcement retirements and resignations, massive releases of jailed criminals for health reasons, firearm shortages, gold spiking, anarchy, outright warfare in the cities. It goes on and on and on. The call by the left to defund the police is possibly the craziest development yet, because without them, it continues. Giraldi mentions a family member who owned a construction company. Quote, he recently said that business is unexpectedly booming. You know why? Because people are building panic rooms. They're building safe havens and even 1960s style fallout shelters in and behind their houses. But unlike the threat of nuclear war in the 60s, the current fear is that with the wreckers being given a free hand by the authorities, organized home invasions penetrating prosperous neighborhoods cannot be that far away. Most of the construction work is being done as unobtrusively as possible because the clients, they don't want their neighbors to know how scared they are. And if history is any indicator, those homeowners have some justification for being scared. 77% of Americans are afraid to share their political beliefs. And yet amid the misery and hardship, the financial uncertainty and societal chaos, we can glimpse a thin silver lining. People, they're learning a lot of good things, and they actually like spending time together as a family. That they can be homeschooled, that they can homeschool their own children, that they can grow a garden. Many businesses are rolling with the punches, everything from restaurants switching to takeout menus to big corporations allowing employees to work remotely. Many people are finding they're more tough and adaptable than they realized. This is good, because who knows what the future will bring? The question is, what are you going to do to adapt to this new landscape? Are you moving out of the city? Are you picking up side gigs to earn money? Are you planting a garden? Are you homeschooling your kids? Are you learning new skills such as carpentry or food preservation? If things aren't going to go back to normal anytime soon, it's worth asking what strategies you can utilize to survive and thrive in this new reality. Thanks to the progressive extremists orchestrating the end of the world as we know it, it really seems we have no choice now, doesn't it? Well, I think we can do it. I think we can look for the good in people and we can help it to grow a little every day. I think we can make great things happen. I really do. I think that we're going to very shortly discover that Black Lives Matter, it doesn't exist. BLM doesn't have a business address. They don't have a bank account. They're not even recognized by the IRS. They're raising millions and millions of dollars for rich white Democrats to run for office. And once you figure that out, it all becomes a big joke, doesn't it? The media is too busy pretending they're legitimate, and that there's some epidemic of police murders and brutality against black people to even accidentally question anything about the group. If anyone asks about the BLM, just remember, it's all fake. Love each other. Be excellent to one another. And we'll see you on Wednesday right here at X Squared Radio. This is X Squared Radio. My name is Brooks Agnew saying, peace, Earth Explorers. Now go and do, and go forth fearless.